Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Bennett Tchaikovsky, the accounting professor, and this is my an additional FIFO process costing question. This presentation is copyright 2024 by Bennett Tchaikovsky. All rights are reserved. If you wish to use it, please send me a message down below and we'll talk. Any opinions expressed herein are those of my own and not my employers or any other affiliated organizations, including but not limited to Irvine Valley College in the South Orange County Community College District. Let's go ahead and get started. So when we're dealing with FIFO process costing, okay, so this is, what does FIFO mean? Well, FIFO means, for us, it basically means FIFO is first in, first out. And when you approach these problems, this is what I want you to do. So when we look at remember what our goal is under process costing is we have these costs sitting in materials. So my beginning, WIP materials, then materials during October. I have my beginning WIP conversion, then my conversion cost during October. And when we look at these right over here, on October 1st, we have the following costs in its beginning inventory: 95 in materials and 125 in conversion. And then over here, we also had during the month 442,800. And then we had conversion costs of 386,975. Now, the reason why I want you to do this first when you have FIFO questions is because we need to get rid of the beginning inventory. This is incredibly important. And it's because when we look at weighted average, we were taking an average cost per unit or cost per equivalent unit of the beginning plus whatever costs I had during the period. For this one here, I'm getting rid of it immediately. So it's FIFO, first in, first out. So this is going to go over here. And so what we're ended up with in terms of what's left in our T account is only going to be the costs of 442,800. This is going to become very critical as we're going through and determining the cost per equivalent unit. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to go through and do. This is an example using FIFO. Okay, so now when we're dealing with first in, first out, how do we approach equivalent units? So with regards to equivalent units, or EU, the way we determine equivalent units for the started and completed, as well as the ending inventory, as well as the ending units, will be exactly the same as we determined the equivalent units under weighted average. Okay, so very important. When we're approaching the equivalent units, the way we determine our started and completed and our ending is exactly the same as weighted average. So coming over here, when we're looking at our equivalent units, we had over here 50,000 in the beginning. We had 300,000 that were started and completed. And then we had 70,000 in the ending. Okay, so when we look over here at equivalent units, right? So basically, so equivalent units for materials. And then we're going to have equivalent units for conversion. What is conversion? Conversion is the direct labor and the factory overhead, or the cost it's taking us to take those materials and convert it into a product. So if we're going through and doing this the same way, at least in these types of problems that I've written, over here, the started and completed, this is going to be 300,000 at 100% because that's what was done during the period. Over here, 300,000 at 100% because that was what was done in the period. When it comes to the ending, right, because this was 300,000 started and completed, these units were fully done, but the ending was only 70% complete with respect to materials and 20% complete with respect to conversion. So in order for me, like, and this is really what we come down to with equivalent units. And this is why we say 70,000 units at 70% completion is going to be the same as 49,000 units at 100% completion. Because these here are at 100% completion, we need to do the same over here. So this is 70,000 times 70%. And then for our conversion, these were 20% complete with regards to conversion. So this is going to be 70,000 times 0.2, right? Or 70,000 at 20% completion is the same as 14,000 at 100% completion. How can we say this? Because we're dealing with mass production. This is process costing. This is not job order costing. Very, very important distinction. This, what we've just done right here, is the same exact process that we use for weighted average, okay? The only difference between our FIFO and weighted average is how we treat the beginning inventory. So if we look at weighted average, we assumed that it was 100% complete during the period. And why did we do this? It's because we included the beginning inventory costs when we're coming up with our cost per equivalent unit. When we look over here, this is very different. This is FIFO. We already sent out the beginning inventory costs. So, in the words of a character from Jerry Maguire, we need to complete me. Okay, we need to complete these units. These units in beginning inventory were already 60% complete with respect to materials. We already sent out these costs to finished goods inventory. So what we need to do is we need to focus on, well, what did we need to do to make these 100% complete? Well, if they were already 60% complete, that means over here, or 50,000 times 40%. That's what we're going through and doing here. This is what we need to do to make them 100% complete. Very, very different than weighted average, right? The percentages of the beginning inventory become relevant. Over here, we didn't care. We just make the assumption that it's 100%. But because we shipped out these initial beginning inventory costs, we have to focus on what do we need to do to make it 100% complete. Over here, right? The beginning inventory over here, we're 55% complete with respect to conversion. So if they were already 55% complete, what do we need to do? Well, this is going to be 50,000 times 45%, or 100% minus 55% that they were already complete. So that's what we're going through and doing when we're looking at beginning inventory, right? So what we can say here is, as we sent under FIFO as we sent out the beginning inventory costs immediately to finished goods inventory. When it comes to equivalent units, we focus on percentage needed to complete the units during the period. So again, this is how FIFO works. Very different than weighted average. But I can tell you right now, if you spend the time to go through to make the T accounts, you get rid of the beginning inventory costs. This is going to help you go through and do these problems. So let's go through over here and let's go ahead and answer these questions. So my equivalent units for materials are going to be 369,000. Okay, so over here, this is 369. My equivalent units for conversion are going to be 336,500. How did I get that? I have my ending, same method as weighted average, started and completed. It was 100% during the period. Now, if you're watching this video and you're taking a class where it says, well, we started this and then we completed this, it's a little bit different. Okay, so just what I would do for those types of problems. If you want me to do one like that, feel free to leave a comment below and I can see if I can dig one up. But I like to keep it a little bit more simple because this is more the introduction to managerial accounting and to give a student a really good base for cost. So started and completed, and then the beginning inventory. Remember, beginning, we're focusing on what did we need to do to make it 100% complete. The materials were already 60. This was already 55. So we need another 40. And then we need another 45 over here. Okay, so that is our equivalent units. Now for our cost per equivalent unit, right? Very important. This is basically going to be equivalent units materials, equivalent units conversion. Okay, so my cost per equivalent unit for materials, this is going to be materials during period or 442,800, right? It doesn't include the beginning because we already moved out those costs. So this is what was left. And we're going to divide this by the equivalent units for materials. And this is going to give us a cost per equivalent unit of $1.20. My cost per equivalent unit for conversion, what we're going to be doing over here, this is going to be conversion during the period divided by the equivalent units for conversion. So this is going to be 386,975. I'm going to be dividing this over here by 336,500. My cost per equivalent unit for conversion is going to be $1.15. So now that we have this over here, this is going to be $1.20. This is going to be $1.15. Now, the next thing we're being asked to do is now we're being asked, well, what was the ending balance over here for our work in process materials? What was our ending balance for our work in process conversion? And then what is the ending balance over here of our finished goods inventory? So what we're going to go through and do, we have two different ways of doing this. But what's very important is we have different ways we can be going through and checking our work. Okay, so let's take a look at this over here. So first thing is, let's go ahead and do it this way. My ending units of materials, my ending equivalent units of materials were 49,000. Therefore, if I take 49,000 equivalent units times my cost per equivalent unit or $1.20, 49,000 times 1.2, I get 58,800. That's the ending balance. Now, Does 442,800 equal 58,800? The answer is no. That must have meant I sent 384,000 over to finished goods inventory. Now, how can we go through and check our work? Well, if I come over here, I had beginning units over here of 20,000, equivalent units beginning, plus 300,000 started and completed, or 320,000. If I multiply that by 1.2, I'm going to get 384,000. You have to check your work on these questions. Always a good way to do it. So let's go over here to our work in process conversion. So the amount that I went through and sent out to finished goods was my beginning plus my started and completed. So we're going to have over here 22,500 beginning equivalent units for conversion plus 300,000 equivalent units started and completed, or 322,500 equivalent units that were sent to finished goods inventory at $1.15 per equivalent unit for conversion. So if I take 322,500 times I'm going to get 370,875. Now, to make sure that I did this correctly, what do I need to do? Well, my ending inventory is 16,100. Well, what should that be? Well, I had 14,000 of ending equivalent units for conversion. So this is going to be over here, 14,000 ending equivalent units for conversion times $1.15. 14,000 times 115, it's going to be 16,100. If you're taking my class, right, I write these out over here so that you can follow along with what I'm going through and doing in the video. You're not required to go through and do these parts. However, when I provide T accounts, there will be no WIP materials, no WIP conversion, no finished goods inventory. Is that because I'm a mean person? Maybe, but it's for your own educational benefit. But I'm providing you with the templates. I'm very open about how I test. So if you sit down and study this, you'll be in pretty good shape. So coming over here, my ending finished goods balance is going to be right over here, or 95 plus 125 plus 384 plus 370, 875, or 974, 875. Ending work in process materials, ending work in process conversion. Okay. Now, there's something that I will typically do in these questions, which are my total costs to be accounted for. You do not have to do this step, but it's a way of making sure, again, did we do this question correctly? And if I look at what was in my beginning WIP materials, my materials during the month, my 125, my 386, 975, and I add all of these up, I get 1,049,775. This has to equal my ending WIP materials, ending WIP conversion, and then my amount in finished goods inventory, because this is effectively what I have gone through and I have allocated out, or a total of 1,049,775. So hope that this was helpful for you. I look forward to seeing you on future videos. If you have any questions you'd like me to go through and answer, feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you for liking and subscribing, and I look forward to seeing you on future videos. Have a great day.